There we go. All right, it's 7:03. We'll call this meeting to order. We're going to start with our minutes from, I'm going to split these guys. So we'll do the minutes from September 29th and October 19th as one motion. Can I get a motion?
Move.
Thank you, Rob. Joel.
Second.
Discussion on those two sets of meetings? Minutes, rather?
Yeah.
No, everything looked good. All right, all in favor? Passes 5-0. Now I'll take a motion on the October 26, 2020 meeting minutes. Thank you, Joel. Rob, any discussion?
Wait, I got a question on that. Is that the meeting where we were reviewing a pay rec with from Hager?
I want to say yes. That's a meeting I was not at. So yes.
That was the one. I don't see that mentioned up in the top. Is that, where are we with that pay rec there?
That it's in the minutes under unfinished business.
Right.
Okay.
We, tabled it because we only had gotten the materials at the last minute.
Right. There was going to be a reviso on it, and then. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And Andrew couldn't be here tonight, so.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I'm good. Otherwise. Yeah.
Right. All in favor? Passes 4. I have to abstain from those. So 4 with 1 abstention. All right. We'll jump down to our public hearing for the CDBG grant for Split Rock Distill. John, you want to open that, or Mary Ellen?
I'll start. Well, I'll start very briefly. We were Topher and Mary Ellen were very kind to loop me into a fast-moving grant program that they were able to find out there, and I'm going to turn it over to Topher to maybe describe the nature of the program. But effectively, from the town's perspective, we're just really trying to set up the framework of the meeting tonight. And this is a public hearing to provide the public the opportunity to weigh in. We received no public comment. Other than those who are participating as part of this meeting, to explain what is in this grant, there hasn't been anything apart from that, but this is part of the process for this grant program. And I can maybe describe a little more of the town end very briefly, but as I described in my note to my manager's notes to you all, to the selectmen, it's a program that has really our involvement in terms of receiving funds and dispersing funds, but we're really Grand Central Station when it comes to this. The real hard work comes on the end of the good folks at Split Rock to really make this thing successful. So the town's role in this is relatively minor, but at least in terms of the application form and in terms of the state, it's a very major piece of the puzzle. So I was glad to certainly sit down and chat with Topher and Mary Ellen about this. We got the ball rolling for this date on the 9th. But it is a fairly fast-moving train that we've been able to jump onto. And so in your packet, I included a copy of the application form so that you could see exactly what was submitted. And then, of course, the letter, effectively the letter of award that we received. So this is part of that process. I think that the application does a good job explaining the who's and what's, but I think probably it's always good to hear firsthand. So is there anything I left out of that, Mariella, in terms of the framework of this rather than the actual merits of it that Topher will do such a good job explaining?
No, that sounds very, very good. And I can fill in more details too, but it might be interesting for the crowd to hear from either Topher and Matt to talk about what you're trying to do. But basically, the quick story is that they're applying for $70,000. And I can fill you in more about what this means. Okay, I'll add another sentence here. So Community Development Block Grant has been funded by HUD for decades, and they tend to fund, the projects have to benefit low to moderate income neighborhoods or people. So in this case, in exchange for so many dollars, Split Rock will hire one person who would get paid a certain wage. And so that's so much, it's a great private-public partnership. And we've done work with towns, NC Hunt, Rising Tide, different businesses over the years to really make this happen. And you might have heard of something about the CARES Act. And so the HUD gave a lot of earlier money to low-income seniors and housing programs. And so this is a particular program where Split Rock is going to star. It's about really preventing, preparing for, or responding to the virus. And so I'll let Topher and Matt take it away from there, because you'll hear a very exciting project that they've got in mind.
Thank you so much. And I think you've seen some bit of the project already. We never thought in a million years we'd be making hand sanitizer, but here we are, and we're still filling orders daily. I doubt the town ever thought he'd be doing meetings via Zoom broadcasted on YouTube for Newcastle. And here we are meeting this way. So the issue at hand, no pun intended, was why we proposed the project to the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development for consideration in this community development block grant program. That was a tongue twister. What happens for us when we make sanitizer is we shut our core business down. We didn't design our company like so many with a pandemic in mind or with hand sanitizer. It was with spirits and cocktail syrups. So the funds that we've been selected to receive will build the redundancies within that existing business plan and allow us to continue to do this without any adverse effect on our core businesses for the foreseeable future here in Newcastle, Maine. I think the only way I can really quickly explain this is just to give a little background on how sanitizer is made, and I can break up where the project will be spent. So when we make sanitizer, we start with sugar and we ferment that sugar and we create an alcohol. We then distill to extract a very high concentration of that alcohol, or ethyl alcohol to be more specific, which is the active ingredient in the hand sanitizer that we then compound, which is just mixing ingredients with FDA guidelines and recipe, and then we bottle it. And that end product bottling is one of the many places that we never foresaw doing this. And once we got into it, we didn't foresee doing it at the capacity we are. So I'm going to take those three parts I just explained, fermentation, distillation, and the compounding and bottling, and just break them down with the project. So fermentation, it's the first thing we really need help with this project on. And we tie up our fermenters for 5 to 6 days when we make sanitizer. So there's nothing else in them but sugar. We're usually using grain and things that have taste for the alcohol. So we will put additional fermenters to allow both of these things to happen simultaneously. Our still, the most expensive and core piece of our company, we actually don't need to do anything to. That was the one thing that when we started our company, we bought a still that we wouldn't grow out of for a while. So this is one of the many benefits. There's no need to tweak or add to it. We just use the existing still. Instead of 2 or 3 days a week, we'd now be using it 5 days a week with those added fermenters, which would be great. Next up is the compounding and bottling. We need a lot of additional things here. And the first piece of the puzzle is those compounding containers that we use. We only have 1 or 2 of. We're usually just collecting spirits in them. We're not mixing things with our bourbon or our vodka like we are when we make sanitizer. We're taking our ethyl alcohol and we're bringing in glycerol and peroxide in very small amounts, as well as a denaturing agent. And that's how we make sanitizer. So the mixing units we need more of. And then last up is the bottling equipment. Right now, we take a lot of the bottling equipment from the syrup company, Royal Rose, which is primarily in smaller vessels. And we hog it. We use it for days. And this would allow us to buy a few pieces of equipment that would have both things being bottled simultaneously. And that brings me to the exciting part of the project to us, and that's expanding our workforce. We would be hiring one person as a requirement for this grant. I think both Matt and I can attest that that would be a minimum. I think we will hire more than just one person here. And these would be jobs that stuck. They wouldn't just be specific to sanitizer. They would, in the future, be part of our company. And I think that's a really exciting part of all of this. So in summary, the project will expand economic opportunities, and that's the core objective of all of these block grants, right, Mary Ellen?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And it does so in creating that one job at minimum here in Newcastle. And again, we do feel confident we're going to create more than that. It'll increase the amount of annual taxable equipment for the town of Newcastle, which I know adds dollars. They may be small, but they're dollars that will be there for a long time in the future. It ensures that we're able to continue to provide sanitizer for the short and long in our community, which has, I think, been helpful. I hope has been helpful in some little way. And again, as we've said, these are federal funds that have been applied for by us. They're earmarked currently for this project, and we're looking for your support in that gatekeeper role and endorsing the project. This is not a liability to the town. It's a way to expand economic opportunity with an existing business by creating jobs, and it comes at no cost.
We all like that. You get to expand, cost the town nothing. It's a great grant from the state.
I thought that was a nice place to just zip it.
Oh, that's a great win-win for all of us.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions? And both Matt and I are more than happy. We can dork out on the making part of it. That's why we started the distillery. It doesn't matter if it's sanitizer or spirits or syrup. We love that. And we got here by bootstrapping, and this seems like an opportunity to do this a lot more effectively. And who knows what the timeline is, but we sure would like to be ready.
Go ahead, Joel.
I just wanted to just go over quickly with John, just what our part in this would be from your perspective, as far as any additional, just like what it would mean for the town in work or liability or anything like that.
I'm actually going to punt on that. I'm going to have actually turn it to Mary Ellen, because she's lived through this far more than I have. And I can maybe add in terms of specifically for our circumstance, but Mary Ellen, can you perhaps kind of talk about how this typically works, and then we can talk about our office specifically.
Yeah. So in the big picture of things, community development block grants, community is in there. Every grant in this block grant program across the country goes through municipalities. So that it's kind of seen as a partnership. So this is a reimbursable program. So Topher and Matt will spend the money and then send the invoices to you. And the point I think we're trying to get to with this modest money is to make the impact, if you will, on the financial offices or time with John's time and others, is to keep it to a minimum. So whether they tie this into 1 or 2 purchase orders or 2 or 3, they'll work that out to make it a minimal impact. There's also, so in one sense, that provides for a lot of accountability, because it's accounted for on the town's finances. There's another phase that I'm going to need to come back to you in, like every community across the country. This HUD wants every town to adopt certain policies around fair housing, equal employment, ADA, and this is not meant to incur any other obligations. It's really to take a snapshot of where you are today. And I can send this off to John probably next couple of days for his review and get it out to you folks at the next appropriate time to get it out. And I'd be happy to, that's more dorking out on the bureaucratic things that I live in. But other than that, I don't think, other than guiding this process, accepting the money, a few hours, and John can talk more about how it would impact the town office. But I know Topher and Matt are going to try to keep this to a minimum. We're not stretching it out for 8 months or a year and, going for $5,000 here and there. So I don't know whether you guys would like to comment on how you envision spending the money. It's kind of informal, but right now.
Hang on a minute, Joel. Go
Sorry.
ahead, Joel, if you want to, or Matt.
These are all things that we too worried about. And I know that there's a lot of documents like the one that I'm holding up, and it is a 5-month timeline to completion. And a lot happens in the first 2 or 3.
Yep.
We know that we want to do this quickly so that we can continue to provide this for the community. And we've already budgeted around consolidating the invoices to companies we've worked with before that we feel comfortable with and know will make the process easy. So I could give more detail on the budget, but it does sort of silo itself into those 3 things that I talked about: additional fermenters, the compounding where we collect and make the sanitizer, and the bottling will be the 3 areas. And we've got our budget into, I believe, 6 companies. So it should be really very low impact on the actual submission of invoices and payment.
All right. Joel, go ahead.
No, I guess the part that I was more curious about was longer range stuff. I know, we did a conduit loan before, and there were some annual filing things that the town was responsible for. I was making sure there wasn't any follow-up after the grant was completed. That was my only real question.
No. Again, this will be issued as soon as we take care of a little bit more paperwork. The state will issue you a contract, and then it becomes reimbursable from Split Rock. They'll submit invoices to you. So there's nothing after the $70,000 is spent. Though they do commit to hiring 1 person at a certain wage level, and that's a variation. That's a COVID waiver from HUD. Thank you very much. There's no other than I think this is right, Topher. You'll be sending payroll information to the state just to verify that person's been brought on. But a year from now, there are no other obligations. They're all on their own after the money is spent and the person's hired.
Right.
And we've submitted a baseline as part of all of this, so they know where we have been in the past few months, and we'll be comparing to that.
That was one of my questions. So all the 70,000 is strictly for materials. For you to expand does not include payroll.
Correct.
Jordy, do you have a question or?
No, I don't. I'm all set. I'll just add, I think it's great. I think it's cool that you guys can do this right in our own community. So kudos to you guys.
If the hand sanitizer is good, I don't remember how many gallons MVH ended up buying from you guys, but beginning it was a flood, so we appreciate you guys getting it for us. But other than that, if there's nothing else, I think we're good. Mary Ellen, you work with John and Topher and Matt and take care of the rest of the paperwork. And
Absolutely. Yep. I'm going to hang around for the broadband discussion if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay.
That'd be safe. Rob?
Do we need to make a motion on this or formalize something?
I don't know. I don't think we need to. I'm sorry, Brian. I didn't mean to
Nope. You're fine, Mary.
I think we're just sort of taking comments from the public and then calling the public hearing to a halt.
Oh, I forgot we were in a public hearing.
Yep. It's easy to do.
It is. All right. On that note, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move on to our broadband discussion. Thank you, Topher and Matt. Appreciate your time.
Well, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Great luck with
Yeah.
this.
Good luck with the broadband.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. So as a means of maybe starting that conversation, I want to say this summer, maybe when the COVID situation started to hit, I received some emails from Carol Miller, who's a resident over on Nob Hill, inquiring about broadband and how does it work, and not how does broadband work, but what's the town's role and all this. And obviously we were knee deep in COVID and what's going on with the town office, and who are we going to ever have the office open again? And so my thought was, well, some other day. But Carol, I think really you've got some good points, and I think that certainly a group could form together and maybe start talking about these things. Much to my surprise, about a month ago, I received another email from Carol inviting myself and a number of residents to chat via Zoom to effectively start talking about these things of a broadband nature. And so we were, I think, David, would you say that was probably about 2-3 weeks ago now? Wouldn't you say somewhere around that neighborhood?
We've had one in between there, so probably
Oh yeah,
a month or so.
okay, yeah. Well, it's all yeah. But in any event, at that point in time, the group met with Alan Hinsey from the Tidewater Telecom and started to get the ball rolling on this loose collection of residents and citizens, and what it seemed to be important, and David will go into a little bit more of the detail of that, is that the town, it's much more effective for the town to endorse and to support a committee and an effort related to broadband in the community and expansion of broadband in that regard. And there are grant funds available that a grant application is due this very month. So unfortunately, while we all wanted to have I've spoken with a couple of you, a couple of the selectmen over the last 6-12 months, but after the code passes, we should really talk about broadband. Well, unfortunately, the state has its own ideas as to when we're going to talk about this. So in any event, it's a little bit more forced than perhaps in my ideal world, where you'd have a little bit more time to germinate on these things. Here we are. So David, you've got a bit of some things you wanted to share with the group, and I've given you the opportunity to share the screen, I think. So I think maybe if you want to maybe just go into a little bit more depth and explain how we got here.
Let me just test to see if this sharing is working. Okay. Now, if I push the right buttons here, we may get it to work. All right, so I trust you see on your screen the proposal to form a broadband committee?
Yeah.
No.
Not yet. So John, I'm not quite sure if we're shared or not.
Uh-oh. All right, let me try one more thing here. See if I can do this. And if not, then multiple, okay. All right, try that. And if that won't work, you can maybe point me in the direction, David. I can share from my end if that helps.
Yeah, because what I can do is tell you the name of the document and you can sort of bring it up. Anyone see that now?
Nope.
No. Okay, John, I think plan B.
Well, can't say we didn't try.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
which one do you want to bring up first?
First will be the committee proposal, the proposal to form the committee. First, I want to say thank you for having me on the agenda. I appreciate it. Most of you know me, but for the people in YouTube land, I'm David Levesque and a resident of 30 Glidden Street. So as John said some time ago, this group sort of percolated with an interest in broadband. And I'm sure all of you agree that prior to COVID, broadband was an issue in the town and other towns as well. But with COVID in place, even now more than ever, it's a big issue. And it's an issue of equality. So not everybody can have access to it because their house isn't hooked up to the internet, or if it is hooked up, it's at very low speeds. And then if you have the ability for high-speed internet, the expense is such that it is cost prohibitive to some folks. So the committee has come together and thought we need to brainstorm ways to fix this situation and make broadband affordable for all of Newcastle citizens, no matter where they live in their income situation. So as part of that, we think a committee should be formed officially. We call ourselves now a working group, and we've had at least 3 Zoom meetings and talked with a number of folks listed in that document there. And what the committee, we think maybe 6-ish is a good number, one of whom or more would be a liaison to the select board. And we would be charged with facilitating gathering of data, trying to find out options that are available, or any way to meet the goal stated here, and which would include seeking grants, one for a planning grant, and then maybe for a phase 2, which would be actually make whatever the plan is to deliver it to all of Newcastle. Certainly having the town's support would help us with surveying and getting things in the newspaper to sort of gather a bigger critical mass behind this. At the bottom of the document, you see a proposed membership. These are folks who have currently been involved. Myself, Megan, Keith Carver, and Carol Miller. John, since he showed up to one meeting, his name's on the list, but we would like, and it seems like the grant funders would like to see a selectman liaison on the committee as well. And we've thrown out there suggested meeting times, but I'm sure that's going to morph into different things, different times, depending on who's involved. John, if you can go on next to there's 2 coverage maps there. You probably can't put them side by side, but you could show one is from Tidewater Telecom, and then we have one from Spectrum. And the problem with these maps, they give us some sense of where there's coverage for services provided by those providers, but it is not so granular that we can actually count households to determine how many people actually are in need of just the basic hookup access. If you'd switch over now quickly just to the Spectrum one so we can see that a little bit. And again, sort of high level views, it really doesn't tell us how many people on that road actually pull off of that service. But it gives us some indication of where they've strung their lines. Now we've asked both companies if they could give us the number of people who they provide services to. I think Tidewater Telecom said they would get that to us. Spectrum refused. And we asked for addresses who haven't been served in their community. And again, Spectrum isn't as cooperative as Tidewater has been. But I hope that maybe under the franchise agreements, we can get more information that would be helpful throughout the process from Spectrum at least. So there's also a spreadsheet there, John, that is a Newcastle index. And this I pulled off the Connect Maine website, and it shows a few areas that are not served. And it seems so small, it seems to me that it's sort of incomplete. And in fact, their website says that, you know, you can't rely on it as being fully complete, but it gives us some recognition of the areas that are currently underserved or not served. I'm not sure how they gathered their data, but it was on their website. So how do we fix the problem? Well, we have to get together and plan and gather information and form options to pursue. And fortunately enough, Connect Maine has issued a grant announcement, if you want to throw that one up, John, that has told us, this came out, I think, in late October, and they said we are taking grant applications up until November 20. So talk about fast train with the Split Rock guys. This one's going to move even faster to be able to put something together for a planning grant. And in that process, as the announcement says, or it said on the website, to start, we would need to get a pre-certification application in, which could be submitted with the grant application. And that form is in your packet with the information there. No need to put it up, John, because it just says fill it out and put it in with your application. Also in the packet is a copy of the actual application for Connect Maine. And that is the framework for which, if we apply for a grant through this grant announcement, we'll have to complete. Fortunately enough, the website included a scoring guide, which is also in the package, which is a great, they're telling us what they want to see and what weight they're going to give it. So it's heavily on, I'm going to flick to myself to remember, on a public cooperation and partnership, meaning the town's role is critical in supporting the endeavor, if not actually submitting the grant request itself. It also asks for, members who are on a committee to help petitions if there are interest of residents and businesses who are interested or stated a need for higher speed internet, and also statements about the economic impact that it would have here. I'm sure, though, we could add in the cultural impact it'll have too, particularly given COVID. I know legal services, medical services, education is all now being delivered over the internet, and we need more and more bandwidth. I know my wife, who's a teacher at Lincoln Academy, is producing videos and broadcasting them from Glidden Street to students across, obviously, the county, but also in Newcastle. And if they can't be reached, they're not getting the same education experience as others who have the benefit of high-speed internet access. So in that packet is also an example that Bristol completed for a grant application, very similar type of grant application, asked many of the same things that Connect Maine does, but it was submitted to the Island Institute. And I think that could be an example that we could follow in preparing a grant application for Connect Maine, which may speed up the process and help with meeting the November 20 deadline. So, and then lastly, the working group started to put together what you're seeing on the screen is our version of an attempt to start to put that grant application together. But when comparing it to Bristol's Island Institute application, we see it's severely deficient and think, well, we need some assistance in putting this together. And I here with all that to ask first that the selectmen appoint a broadband committee, that you would overall improve the endeavor to seek the grant from Connect Maine, and that you would improve town assistance in preparing that grant, or as an alternative or in addition to, approved hiring a consultant who can turn it around quickly and submit it. Now, I understand Mary Ellen has communicated with the Connect Maine people, and the grants are currently looking from awards have been around 6,000 to 23,000. It seems to me, based on Bristol's one, we should be at least requesting 15 so that we can do proper planning to find that option that's going to fit this community. So that's a lot to throw at you. Another option that has been discussed is whether or not we should coordinate more as a regional effort. And it was decided for one town, we probably shouldn't do that, but there may be other communities you would want us to see if we can do something collective with. Unfortunately, I don't think we could determine that within the week and a half or so before the 20th. So maybe this grant request should be on our own, but we could certainly put within the request that we would seek that or investigate the possibility of that. And I would think that they would like that, given the fact that, you know, they're going to be inundated after a while from all these towns making requests. But if a group of them can get together and work together, they can just give one or two bigger grants in there. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you have or comments you have, and just take it from there.
No, we've been talking about this for I don't know how many years now, getting a broadband committee together. Now that land use is almost done.
Well, yes, so the timing seems to be good. I think the timing is good too, because we may be seeing with future stimulus packages or you know, federal legislation, they may be including broadband incentives or initiatives in there. So having a committee together to watch for those, or, you know, may make sense for that just alone.
Right. I think we're probably all in favor, can speak for everybody, but definitely probably all in favor of putting this committee together. Question is, John, it's the 9th. It gives us 10 days to put a grant together. I don't know if Mariano, is that anything your department can help with? Work with John and David and kind of pull this off in 10 days?
I think, yes. I also think David or Keith from the committee has spoken with a consultant who, so I'm not sure how to talk about this exactly. So maybe the consultant would charge you, or maybe depending on things, David, you could get him to create depending on how far you want to go, whether you want to do phase 1 plus phase 2 is one.
Right. It was my understanding to get the grant in on time, given the person we spoke to knew that we would be addressing the board tonight, said for 1,500, he would be willing to put it together for us. And he's done a number of them, so he thinks it could go fairly quickly. The quote was for 1,500. But if you're on the 6,000 end of that grant, that's not all helpful. If you're on the 23,000 end of the award, then that's money well spent.
So I think the committee needs to talk it through a little bit more and keep up with John a little bit more to figure out where they want to land on the request and whether you want to pay a consultant. I'm happy to do something, but I won't charge for that, and I may not be as good as their consultant. But anyway, we team up together for sure.
Well, I've had a lot of people say that they would review or, you know, take a second look, but, you know, nobody's, except for the one consultant, say he'll sit down and write it.
Okay. John, where would we pull the 1,500 from if we hire the consultant?
There's a money tree in the back behind the town office, you see. And,
It looks a little trim lately, though.
right? Yeah. All the
This
leaves
fall.
have fallen, you know, yeah, in case you notice, all the leaves are down. We just had fall cleanup this weekend at the office. So, specifically, I don't know. We don't have a budgeted line for this, for the 1,500. So this would, I just kind of came about this a little bit later as well. So I'm not sure exactly. I mean, in a budget it's the size of ours, I'm sure I could find $1,500 over the course of 12 months. But that's certainly an unplanned expense, and we've had a number of unplanned expenses this year. But on the other hand, yeah, go ahead.
Would it
Dave.
be possible for, if they're successful, that the consultant's compensation comes out of the award?
I don't know. I don't know. So that's a good detail to figure out, David. That's a good detail.
Yeah. So maybe we're talking with that person, maybe we could talk about different arrangements like that.
So David, I think something you missed. What would if we got this award of $15,000, what's that go towards?
Well, it would go to, if I'll just pull up on my end, on my big computer here, the grant request made from Bristol, because they itemized fairly decently where they expected the funds to be used. And I will give you some of their examples in just a moment.
But
Or maybe there we go. So it's up on your screen. And if, John, if you want to roll down a little bit more, you get down to their, right there. So there they have additional funds for the consultant to walk them through the planning process. They have mailing and of course the town staff time. Although it's interesting that they put a money dollar value on volunteer time. If it's volunteer, I assume they're not getting paid. Engineering time must be looking at just the technical aspects of where things need to be wired.
Well, that's specifically from Tidewater, so they're virtually granting us the Tidewater.
Yes, but I think that is the budget that they were looking for the ultimate build out or whatever that they came up with phase 2. Whereas ours, the 15,000 would help with surveys, gathering the information needed to figure out what is the level of service that's being provided, what are the costs involved of that, and who's being served, who's being not served. I think Bremen, part of their survey, they went and just drove around and took notes, but they did that with somebody who assisted them as well. So that, I guess that budget proposed there is they're looking forward to what I believe is phase 2, as opposed to the planning part of it. I don't, Mary Ellen, did you see this grant application?
Yes. So that is a larger scope than what I thought you might have in mind. I would say too that this particular consultant that David or Keith talked with did an excellent job in Booth Bay Harbor, where because it's hard. Maybe folks around the screen know better than I, but it's really hard to. In quick order here to really map out who's got DSL, who's got fiber, who's got cable. And so Brian Lippel did a super job for Booth Bay and Booth Bay Harbor, which really told them what they had where. So I will say too, so I think David and the committee, hopefully they'll be appointed shortly, has some more work to do. I also want to just mention that this is going to be a competitive round. I think they're only looking at 6 to 8 planning grants. But it's also would put Newcastle on the map saying, okay, here's our plan. Here's our rough cut numbers done in 2 weeks or something like that. And then if you don't get the award, you could have worked with the Island Institute and tap into their dollars, which is now what you see Bristol is doing. And so planning involves a bit of community engagement, outreach. So this group has been talking amongst themselves really well, but really working with the community in some Zoomable way and really touching base with a lot of the businesses and other cultural organizations in town is going to be vital. And then also that mapping piece that I mentioned that Casco Bay did very well. So just in terms of stepping to the future, so whether you do a big phase 1, maybe phase 1, phase 2, you've got to have that done if you're going to apply for actually the money it takes to build something. So if you want to, as you know, we approved as voters the $15 million bond, and the Connect Me, I think, is likely to announce, I don't know, either later this year or next year, So maybe we won't be ready to tap into that, but you can't apply for those installation dollars without some community planning process. So whether you were successful with Connect Me or maybe later on with Island Institute, we've got to go through the steps of community engagement, network assessment or gap analysis, whatever they call that, and then actually laying out some network design. I almost used the word fiber, but it can be more than just a fiber here.
Right. And it may include for phase 2 contributions from the community, whether it's town funds, business funds, those type of things that hopefully we would learn and can investigate with the planning grant itself. So I don't recall if within the process of finding our code, comprehensive code, were people talking about broadband, but if we have notes from that, that's important to be included in these type of applications to show that there is a big community desire to have equal broadband across the town.
Right. And it is well needed in the town. I live on one of those roads that's totally, I'll say not served what we have out here for DSL from Tidewater. I'd be better off with a 56K modem, you know, so.
And oftentimes Lincoln Academy has these hotspots that they have to give to students to be able to use the internet system because it's just not in their homes.
Right, yeah, Newcastle has a lot of roads that are underserved, so.
Right.
Whether
And
Tidewater's there with DSL or Spectrum's there with their version of high-speed internet, so. On our contract with Spectrum, it doesn't say a whole lot about broadband. It's coming up on being 10 years old.
Mhm.
So there's not a lot in that. There's not any teeth to it at all for the town. Matter of fact, because I tried to get them to do my road, because supposedly my road is the only road in town they do not service. So, and they just flat out refused 10 years ago.
Well, I was
So-
thinking with the contract, what would be helpful there is if they're reporting receipts of their franchise fees from the consumers, they should be able to tell you who they are. And then by process elimination, we know who isn't being served, at least by them. And then you cross-reference that with Tidewater and who they're serving. And eventually you're going to narrow down to the actual number of people who aren't. And that's what's going to be key is through the planning process is identifying who isn't being served to the right level. And again, it's just not who's not hooked up, is what speeds are hooked up at. And then what are the costs of those services. So we need to gather all that information to be able to figure out the plan to really move us forward. And hopefully that planning money would allow us to do that.
So does anybody want to make a motion to form a broadband committee?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Joe. Do I have a second?
I'll make a second. I got a question if we're
All
gonna go
right,
into
George, go
discussion.
ahead.
So Dave, it looks like you're looking for a select board member to be on the committee. Is that-
Yeah, like I heard Joel Lynn a lot being floated at us during our meetings, but I don't know if that was conflicted or if,
You seen my internet speed right now?
yeah, you know. So, you know, I'm not, you know, recruiting anyone particular. We do need at least one person, and I think that would be helpful because, you know, there's town issues that need to be discussed as we're doing this. And, you know, John was helpful in the meeting that he attended, and it would be helpful to have a select person. And of course, that scores highly on the grant proposals if we have that.
Right. You'll probably have to discuss that as a board. And go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just another more broad question about membership. I know that there's this ad hoc group that's been meeting that do we want to give other residents the opportunity to participate as well, which kind of could be in conflict with the need for perhaps a quick action in this initial phase of the committee. But it just seems like we probably should, ask if other individuals are interested, and not just limit it to the group that has been meeting.
Well, you could certainly appoint a group to start and then add folks or remove them as you see fit going forward.
Sure.
Right, because there's no magic. You're muted, John. There's no
I was
magic
just gonna
number for committee members. So
Right. Well, and I was just going to say, in terms of my appointment, I mean, I could attend the meeting, but not be an official member of the group. I can be there as kind of, I don't know, some sort of ex officio member. I certainly wouldn't want to be in the way of, Newcastle residents who, have a vested, certainly a vested interest. And I'm certainly glad to help in any capacity. Certainly if the board's on board, then I'm certainly glad to support, in any way. So if I'm appointed as part of it, that's okay. And if we find 2, 3, 4, 500 people who all want to do it too, I'm more than glad to step aside and allow others to take that seat. So,
But I think for the grant funders, it will look better, at least to have somebody who actually serves on the board, on the committee as well.
no, I think we get you a selectman on the board, but John could be an ad hoc member. But that's there, but not appointed. So
Right. So you could do it in a couple steps, just appoint the committee, that you make the committee, then afterwards appoint whomever you think needs to immediately, and then you could add to it.
right.
I mean, I'm sure the more hands, the more productive we can be if it gets managed appropriately. But
John, if we appoint people tonight, do we need the official documents, or we can do that later?
ad hoc, they don't need to be sworn in. So I think we could probably just move forward as is. I don't think you'd need, you mean in terms of them signing the swearing in papers and the like?
Oh, no, the actually our appointment papers, actually, we did away with those, right?
Yeah. Michelle just does them. So you don't have to sign anything.
Right.
You can simply appoint, and then, the main issue is, can the grant be submitted? That's really the only thing that's, the important, because that grant has to be in before you even actually meet again. That's
Right.
how short a timetable we're on. So, yeah.
Well, I could form the committee if you pull that member list up again tonight.
Yep, I'll do that. I think I'll do that. I'm trying to find, I think I closed it. Sorry, David. I'll hold on. I'll get it back for you.
that's all right.
Hang tight, everybody. Sorry.
It's on that initial proposal one, the one that says Newcastle committee proposal.
Okay. There it is. We got it. I knew we wouldn't have. There we go. And there's membership.
Sure. So we could amend our motion to form the committee and appoint David Levesque, Megan Ditcher, Keith Carver, Carol Miller to the committee tonight. We'll have to figure out a board member real quick. And is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a volunteer for the committee? Rob? Joel?
Mr. Blurry.
Mr. Blurry?
That's not it.
Right. The only thing is, when you get like Joel, he's, daytime meetings are rough. But I'm not saying he doesn't want to do it, but
The only reason why I would hesitate is because just thinking of what we have to do with code implementation, there's going to be some work there. So just don't want to take on too much right now, considering everything I got going on in my business.
right. mean, I can't do daytime meetings because starting next week, I'm back in Augusta every day, working in a new building, so. Do my own broadband process, you know? David, you think the meetings are nighttime or during the day or whenever?
We usually, I think our 3 meetings have always been at 3 o'clock on a Monday.
Is that something any of you guys can make?
I can't do daytime for sure.
No.
I can't take on anything else right now. Work is a little crazy.
Rob, is that something you can take on?
Uh, it's I'd rather also not take anything more on, but I guess for maybe as a short-term thing, just to get this initial phase through, I could do it, but I'd rather not take on another thing as well. But I guess I can do it as a short-term. Let's get this started.
All right. Everybody's good with that? Add Rob to that list?
I mean, is it something that we could talk to them about changing the time? And
I'm sure we'll be flexible, you know, based on the needs of who wants to be involved.
yeah,
Yeah, because I'm with Joel. I'd have to be, if I did, it'd have to be 5 o'clock at night, the earliest. Let me get back to town.
Well, essentially, we could use a name, and then as the second tier, we could use, you know, their thoughts. But first and foremost is just inserting a name after the selectmen liaison.
is it something you'd be interested in, Brian? You have some experience in this.
Yeah, I'd probably do it for the short term. You know, as long as we push those meetings out a little later than 3 o'clock. You know, if that's possible, David, I can jump in and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm flexible. You know, we haven't discussed it with the others, but I'm sure they, you know, they're all committed. They want to get this done, so we'll find,
Right.
you know, find a way to make it work for everyone.
All right, I'll jump on that for now then.
Okay.
Place Rob's name in mine.
Thank you.
Everybody's good in that? All in favor?
Aye, aye.
Aye, aye. I'm assuming that passed. Nothing. I don't see everybody. So. Rob, you voted yes?
I did.
I didn't. Yeah. So that passes 5-0. All right, so there's your committee. And we'll put John on there as an ad hoc member.
So
And just show up. Look pretty.
is it necessary now for you to vote to give us permission to go ahead and seek the grant, whether in conjunction with just the group or to search the possibility of a consultant to help us?
That's the problem with funding for the consultant. I'm not sure where we get $1,500 from.
Well, another question is, it looked as though that example that we had from Bristol included matching funds. That it sounds like if these are competitive grants, then they need matching. And it's looked like some of that matching was in kind, but I think that that's something that we're going to need to review before committing the town to any matches. So I think that's going to be challenging when the scope is undefined for us to authorize the committee to move forward in some way that might bind the town.
So I think that the matching part was for their phase 2, or would be the equivalent of our phase 2. But for the planning part, I don't believe there's any matching requirements, although I'm sure it would help. But Mary Ann, do you have any?
I think we'd have to be building it based on in kind, because we can't commit your dollars, you know, we can only commit the volunteers and memberships time. It's too short of a time to do that. I'm sure Bristol's been talking about this for a while, so they lined up donations. We're not ready to line up donations right now, so I think we have to deal with in-kind stuff. Yep. Maybe we'll only get 5 points, but you've got to start somewhere.
Sure.
If nothing else, this will be a learning round. We've done that before.
Well, the way I see it, the worst they can do is say no, and if you don't hire the consultant, you're not out anything, so.
John, can you work with Mary Ellen and Dave and the committee and maybe blow this together in 10 days?
We'll do the best we can, right? Well, that's all we can do. Hey, we were successful on one tonight, you know, I mean, why not go 2 for 2?
So the other piece I'd like to understand, just for your process and the selectmen's ability to make their own decisions or authorize John to do something. So we don't have time to get to another selectmen's meeting. So if the committee and John and Mary Ellen help a little bit, can John be authorized to actually say this is pretty good, you know, this can be submitted? I certainly wouldn't want to submit something without being reviewed by John and really okayed by him.
Yeah, we can give our town manager the power to approve the grant.
Okay.
You know, and send it in, so
Great.
as long as John's good with it. It's his 10 days that, you know, because he has nothing else to do in the next 10 days.
Oh my goodness.
It's been a quiet last 10, so why not? I'm sure the next 10 will be just as quiet, right?
Sure.
Well, we'll just keep him in the bunker where he is now and
Right.
all the information, so you can't come out until you have this right.
All right. Cut a little hole in the floor and we'll drop food and water down.
That's right.
I think it will be tough, but I think if we get right on it and maybe break up some of the pieces among the committee and then somebody that can bring it all together, you know, I got to wonder why they have such a short window on this anyways. They want people to really just throw it together quickly. I mean, it was October 20, I think the announcement came out. So it's
The state is good at that. I went to a meeting for I think a parks one, part for the trail stuff. And the meeting was like the end of the month and the grant had to be in like 15 days later. And like, don't even have even time to think about it. And they were teaching you how to do the grant work in the meeting I was at. So it's like, how do you even do that?
right.
So,
Well, I know Mary Ellen has been in contact with some contacts at Connect Maine. That's helpful. If any of you know of anybody that has any insight that or suggestions for us, just pass it on to the committee or, you know, Brian's our liaison now, so feed it to him and then get it to me at least. That would be helpful. Any tips or ideas, certainly.
Okay.
so I'll make a quick motion then to give our town manager the authority to approve the grant and get it sent in.
Okay.
I think so. All in favor? There you go, John. Good luck, buddy.
Thanks, really.
Thank you. You know, it feels good though, you know, we've been talking about it for a long time and now we're actually starting to do a little something. And maybe change will come about because of it. So I appreciate your support tonight. Thank you.
It's been on my project list for a long time, so
Okay. Super.
it'd be good to get one more check mark on here.
Yes, definitely.
All right, well, great. He's gonna be
Thank you.
zooming tomorrow. I can't hear you, Dave.
I'm just trying to figure out my exit. I found the door.
Found it?
Yes,
Bottom right corner, it says leave.
yeah.
There he goes. Thank you, Mary Ellen.
Yep,
Appreciate
thank
your time as always.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to the fun conversation. Core zoning passed by a huge number.
Hey, it passed.
It
That's all
passed.
that counts.
That's right.
The way I see it is it's the same 44 people that show up at the general town meeting to pass things at each year. So
Right. Yep. True. All right. So where are we going from here? How do we have town approval to put this thing in motion. John put out a nice memo with next steps.
Right. So, I mean, just to maybe go down that, I mean, basically the way the code reads is that the reviewing authority has a lot of responsibility in terms of how this works. So I met with Ken last week. I've talked with Ben, who's the chair of the planning board, about what the next steps are. Both are excited and ready to get going to make sure that this is as successful a launch, I guess, or grand opening or however you. There's no scissors involved, but this is there's a lot of work to be done. So our online map service is already up and running with the new districts. It's ready to go. So Ken and Harriet and Ben and Jim, everyone has access to that. We'll be plugging that into our new website when that goes live. Let's hope December, maybe. So we're ready to go on that end of it. The paper copies, the kind of maps that hang in the office or over at the over at the community room. We need to get those printed, but I've already made some steps on that. So that's kind of a first step. Where it kind of gets, where the work begins really for everybody else is in the application forms. So we really need to get that in shape. Again, as I said, Ken and Ben are both kind of eager and want to get that started. So we need, that's the next most important piece in my mind. It allows us to kind of put the whole code into kind of like a prism of like, okay, this is all the possible things that we're going to have to deal with, and how does someone easily walk up and hand a form to the code officer that says, this is what I want to do, and something that kind of fits with the code. So I've talked with both of them, and I'm sure those of you who are so eager to help out and willing to help out in drafting the code will be asked to help out in that regard as well, because a good form, a good application form can make this all work a lot easier. There's and then in concert with that, there's the fee schedule. So we'll need a new fee schedule. My hope is that we can have a draft of that application form for your next meeting, so at least you can get a sense of kind of where we're going. I have not talked with Ken and Ben about that one, but that would be nice, because then at your first meeting in December, I'm hoping that that's when you'd approve a fee schedule. I want to give people as much time as possible, if we can, to be prepared of what costs might be, and then they can judge in addition to what the standards are, what the costs are. And then moving beyond that, we need to educate both the code officer and the planning board. We need to make sure that they're as educated as they possibly can be when this is coming up, and knowing going through that process, then we're going to have situations where we're going to run across where, geez, that should have said this, and it should have said, we need to make some minor changes. So the idea really is to start a punch list. So code amendments, to have really a list of some of those things that we've been talking about through the process, but things that are just like, oh, geez, why didn't we have a period there? Simple things, nothing, dramatic. But it could be much more broad than that. I talked about in my memo, the historic preservation ordinance. That's something that has been a very important topic for a number of residents. So I think some mechanism to do that. Again, I would suggest that those things somewhat filter through the planning board, which is really the mechanism we've created to go through all this. And then that then comes back to you all as something you would hopefully be voting on for the first time in terms of amendments in June. So that process has to begin very quickly. And then the last thing, which is kind of separate from all this, but needs to be considered, is the comp plan. So the comp plan was voted on in June of 2018. It passed pretty substantially. We sent it to the state for their consideration. They sent back with not a lot of notes, but with some notes. In addition, we then took the character code, threw it away, stripped it out, took the best pieces of it, and created a core zoning code. Now that core zoning code needs to agree with the comp plan so that there's those two documents agree with each other. So we need to talk about also a comprehensive plan implementation committee and a comprehensive plan, and that same committee working on making those repairs to the comp plan. So there's a number of steps. Many of them really aren't something that the board necessarily has to jump on until you get to the fee schedule. But there's a lot of work, behind the scenes, I think, to be done to get everyone, the code officer, the front office staff, the planning board. There's bylaws that the planning board needs to start to adopt, procedures for how they handle their applications. We need to wrap up the work of the design review committee, where I had a good chat about that today. There's all these little loose ends. Thankfully, you don't have to deal with a lot of them, but you need to know basically that they're out there and how we're putting these pieces together. I'd also add, lastly, I didn't put it in the memo. We did budget for additional time for the CEO to work in the office, and so I've talked with Ken about that. We've created a bit of a plan on that for him to work an additional day a week in the office. So that way people not only can spend more time in the office with educating himself, meeting with folks coming in or over the phone or going out from the office to meet with people on site. But that will provide more opportunities for someone in the building to sit and learn and pick this up, because honestly, even for those who I'm less so than some of the members of the board here, but I've been living with this core zoning code for almost 18 months, I guess, since we kind of started the new effort here. And there's things that I would have to talk through with probably several other members, whether it's Wanda and Rob or Tor and Rem or Ben and Kevin. I mean, there's a you got to start to work those muscles the right way. And so one thing that I also talked about is the idea of having going through the permits that we've had over the last few months and have Ken sit down or have Ken sit down with a couple members of the committee who are free and say, okay, how would this application go through the core zoning code? Of course, once we have an application form, we can it's a little bit easier to work with that. But the main thrust of that is to start to take the commonly applied for items and start to become somewhat routine and somewhat comfortable with those types of items, because that's really, there's always, as a code officer, as an old code officer, there's always the decks and the porches and the small additions. You can do those in your sleep. It's the odd ones you're never going to have comfort with. So those I'm not so concerned with in terms of education, understanding. It's trying to get so there's a base level of knowledge for folks who are interpreting this code, so that they can make good decisions, and really be able to move swiftly, and get some confidence in how they're operating. So that's how I see it where we are, in a week and a half. And I hope, I hope that it goes as smoothly as I'm asking for, but that doesn't always happen. So.
Sure.
I think once you get the application drafted up, you can see, what boxes need to be checked off in black and white. How, what you have to do to get a permit for whatever you're doing. I think a lot of the other stuff will fall into place. We can figure out fees from that document. So I think that's a good timeline. If we can get that document drafted up by our next meeting, I think that would be a good goal.
No, I agree. Let's concentrate on the stuff we have to have ready for January 1. And then everything else we have till June for, we can just push that off because we've got 2 holidays coming up too. So
Yeah.
we're gonna mess all this up. Go ahead, Wanda.
No, I was just thinking about the fee schedule, and that really shouldn't change a whole lot, should it? I mean, we have a fee schedule now. I mean, I don't think the town's going to be real happy if, the fees like double and triple, and, I don't think that's what they signed up for. So, I mean, I think we must have a working platform that we can work from. So it doesn't seem like, maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't seem like there should be a whole lot other than maybe some tweaking as to looking at what we have now and then adjusting it a little bit maybe, but.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Wanda. I don't, so we reworked, or I guess I'd say we somewhat reworked that fee schedule last winter. I think it was last winter. Do you remember? Yeah, it was since you've been on the board, right? Yeah. So, so the idea of that was to really set ourselves up so that when we're ready, we somewhat have a base to start from, and then we can take the code and put that into it. The only thing that's different is, I mean, some of the terminology is different. There's, we don't have design review, so there's different pieces to it. And the level of review is different as well. So there's a question of, we have architectural, standards in some districts. If it takes a code officer twice as long to review a house in one district versus one with a lot less standards, is that something, how does the town feel about that? So, I mean, my feeling in terms of my guidance is that you want to make sure as much as you can that the permit fee should cover the cost of the time it takes for the town to review it. So if there's more, should it be more or should it be the same? That's up for you guys to determine. But, as it is now, we have the design review fee, which is, it's one thing. And then we have the building itself, which is another. Now we don't have the design review fee, but the time it takes, it's different. But how do you account for that? I don't know the answer to that. I don't have an idea. I'm not even recommending it. I'm just saying, I want to look at all that before,
Right. But I guess my point is those fees are already there. So you may have to look at it differently, but you're not going to add a new fee. Those 2 fees may mold into one.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but I guess what I'm looking at is that we're not looking to increase fees over and above kind of what they already are, because we've told people this is a much easier process. So if you tell them it's an easier process and then all of a sudden you start jacking up the fees because it takes somebody longer to look at it, it kind of doesn't kind of match what we told people. So
and I'm not just, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating that we wouldn't do anything other than what you were saying in terms of a square foot amount is a square foot amount, which is basically what we do now. All I'm saying is just that whatever I want you to think about what that means, I guess, is really all I'm saying. And if you guys come back to that, that's fine. If you come, say, gee, it's different, then that's fine too. It's really up to the 5 of you in terms of how you want to strike that, but like you said, if it's combined and that's one way to get there, I'm less concerned. I think that I'm less concerned with the amounts. I'll let you guys worry about the amounts as much as making sure it's in place. That's really my main concern, is that we have something that it's easy to use. It makes sense. You can pick up the form and know what you're paying, and you can drop it off. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, and the impact of that. I think that we can talk about as well. So.
Right. Can you send out the current fee schedule, John?
Can I?
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah. I don't have it on me, but I can.
No, not now, but next week or when you're back in the office. Not do it now.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Can you also send out the current application?
Yeah. What I'll do, maybe when we do that for your next meeting, we talk about what it will be. I'll put everything together so that way it's all in the packet of what is and what's proposed, or the working draft of what's proposed. Because the idea really is that in 2 weeks, in terms of the timeline I'm talking about here, in 2 weeks we'd give you a draft of kind of what it would look like, and then in 4 weeks, I suppose, which would be your first meeting in December, that would be when you'd have to make a decision on it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else? On land use? I guess we got our plan. John's laid it out pretty good. So go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, obviously, through the end of the year, there's a lot of implementation work. So getting on things like historic preservation or, other things, it is challenging. But your recommendation is that basically we delegate all the code work to the planning board, because the planning board is a more appropriate body to be handling these things. And so that frees up the Board of Selectmen to do other things.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right, Rob. I mean, I think that the planning board, recent experience aside, the planning board usually makes changes to the land use ordinance, or in this case, the core zoning code. And your job really here is really to, create warrants and put them on for the voters to consider them. So that's a far easier role than pop-up meetings and all the other things you guys have been asked to do. One thing I would probably suggest, I do think that historic preservation question is one that came up a lot, and a number of residents were concerned about that. What I would probably urge is some fairly quick action, if that's the direction you want to go, to at least establish that group and establish the creation of that group and look for volunteers to serve. There may be already residents who've already, I know, a number of you who did the pop-up meetings, and maybe already folks who you've talked to who've expressed that interest. But it'd be great to get that group work started. And because I know that was a concern for folks in the design review areas, that the committee was going away, and is what's proposed enough, not enough, what have you. So if that's a tonight decision, or that's a 2 weeks from now decision, I think that'd be a good idea. I would also suggest that their work filters up to the planning board. So the planning board is really the group that's kind of synthesizing all these different pieces. They're working with the comp plan implementation committee if there's things that have to happen there, and really they're the grand central station of making those code changes. And really, though everybody here except for Brian has served on either the NLPC or the zoning committee, so the four of you are really prepared to have these conversations. Really, you shouldn't have to necessarily get in the muck as much on these things. It's really something that usually the planning boards handle. So if this historic preservation ordinance committee kind of filtered their information up through to the planning board, then they're the ones who are kind of kneading the dough and making that whatever. I'm not really a baker, so what do I know? But they're making it happen in any circumstance. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tor.
So the appointments. So what I think is there should be a steering committee or some kind of committee that's in charge of this preservation ordinance. How it gets sort of whatever it is, a group of people are in charge of sort of assessing that, doing research, figuring out what the language is in that, in a document, and then that gets reviewed by the planning board, and then the planning board sort of figures out how that melds in with the rest of the code. But back to the appointments, or that committee or that group of people, is that BOS work or is that planning board work, is my question.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, Tor. That's I meant to say that. Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys would still be the appointing that committee, but really their work product is something that would go to the planning board as opposed to back to back to you and then back to the planning board. And I think this board of selectmen should set some sort of mission statement as to what the scope of their work is, who their membership is, and to whom their work product goes for ultimate inclusion as a piece of kind of our land use framework of regulation, I suppose.
So I'm relatively optimistic about arranging that committee. I think even going back a couple of years with design review, sort of keeping them up to date with how the code was being revised and what was going on. There was interest in design review committee members, and then some other folks that I've spoken to during the pop-ups and that were concerned about the dismissal of design review. So I think we could, I'm willing to throw out some names and some people to talk to. I think that will be an energized group of people, actually. So I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. I think that will be good.
Yep, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're not quite ready to do that tonight, but I think maybe we should aim to be able to develop a brief mission statement and create the committee at our next meeting, and maybe we can have some names in time for that. But even if we don't have the names, then I think we should get the committee started and then solicit names, and we can appoint them as people come forward. But I think we made it pretty clear that we were committed to doing this in the process before the code was approved, and I really think we need to follow through, and it's a critical piece.
That all works. Go ahead, Joel.
So I think the number one thing at this point is getting together sort of that mission statement and that directive. So does someone want to volunteer to start working on that, maybe pass something around? I don't know. Tor, you worked on the...
Yeah, I'm willing to be involved with this just because I've been talking to a lot of people.
I think if you drafted something up and then passed it around or passed it to John, he could pass it to us, and we could sort of have a little bit of time to look at it. I think that would be the best way to move forward.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So on a different note, besides historic preservation, all the standalone ordinances are pulling out of the existing land use. What do we need to do to make those all work by January 1? I know we're just pulling them out. We're not really changing formats, but I'm sure there's got to be some cleanup work.
Well, we don't have to do anything, but they should be looked at. They work. We have we actually have we have that application that will likely come back in January for the cell tower. And that makes it sound like it's a big cell tower, but it's really just a transponder. So it's not really what it sounds like. But anyway, I think that so the historic preservation is one piece of this. I think the other piece of this is that it would probably make some sense for the board to ask or direct, I suppose, the planning board to review those ordinances, those sort of pulled out ordinances, including shoreland, first and foremost. That's really the primary document that needs work and needs just that once over. And likely just largely for consistency with state, the latest shoreline zoning regulations, because right now it does not meet that. So I would suggest that the board, if it's kind of going down that road, would be to create or to request to the planning board that they take on that task of reviewing all those documents, all those standalone ordinances, and prepare those for for readoption, I suppose, in June. As you know, what if there's anything that has to be done, what would be done, how to make them all work, or have everything work together more efficiently. You know.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, is the planning board at full strength?
No.
Oh,
So we want to encourage people to come forward, and it might be some people who had concerns about the code who want to be part of implementing it. That this is an opportunity for them to understand more and to make sure that their concerns are heard in the implementation. So I'd encourage people to volunteer.
all right. We do need them. How many members do we need? Because you're thinking we might lose a couple.
I think we have 2, right? I think there'd be 2 vacancies at present. So I can't remember if adding Kevin Houghton made us at 1 or if that left us with 2. But yeah, we're in need of members. We're also in need of members on the appeals board. I don't think we ever filled Wanda's seat, so we need to. I don't know if they've met once, I think, since Wanda left. They couldn't bear to meet without Wanda is what happened. So
They only met twice when I was on it, so
yeah.
I don't think it has
Well,
anything to do with me.
twice more than they have since, I think. So but yeah, so we need members on that, and you know, certainly people who have previous experience. So yeah, I mean, I think that's another group, but the planning board really is the heart of so much of what's going to happen with the implementation of the code. So
Well,
I'd echo Rob's concern.
and one of the nice things with the new code is that the planning board is actually going to be able to do planning.
Correct. Be nice. Something different. Tori, you had your hand up first before Joel. So.
Well, yeah, I just, back to those code modules that we're talking about. I mean, the shoreline zoning ordinance, I think, is going to be something that we need to, that might require the most effort, I think. Just going through that, making sure that's up to date with state regulations, whatever. But I think, for the most part, it's not a lot of, it's revising work. It's sort of changing it, modifying it to meet the format that we have in our new code, so that it's kind of looks and feels like everything else that we've got now. So, but I just, it's not. I just want to be clear to everybody that's listening. It's not a matter of rewriting new modules. It's more a matter of reformatting, looking to make sure that we're up to date with state regulations and those kinds of boring nitty-gritty things, so. Yeah.
Joel, go ahead.
My understanding of the shoreland zone situation was that there are a couple different ways you can implement shoreland zone, and so we were looking at maybe changing which system we were kind of using, but then there's different boxes you need to check, and but to do that, I mean, is there community outreach that we need to do? Is it something that we can? I'm not looking to add more to our plate either, but I also just realized that we're putting a lot on planning board's plate, and so if there's any way that we can take something off and expedite it, because I think the actually figuring out how we're going to implement the shoreland zone ordinance is pretty straightforward. We just have to know what the will is.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in working in shoreland zone in a couple of different towns, the method that we have is the most complicated right now currently. And so by moving to I forget what it's called, but basically where you don't have to calculate volume of a building anymore.
Right.
That's the one I think the town really should move towards.
Yeah.
And if there's a way that we could help facilitate that or set up another committee, even though we can't find people to fill our current committees. I would love to help with that, because the planning board has a lot to do. So
Yeah, we're looking for new people, and then at the same time, it sounded like we just told them they're going to meet once a week for the next 6 months.
right, whatever committee Ben's on gets all the work.
Right.
It sounds like a lot, but I don't think it's really all. I don't think it's as much work as it sounds like, truthfully. I mean, the state regs are already written up, so you take that and you hold it on one page, and then you take what you got, and you look at the other page, and you say, "Wow, that one makes so much sense." I think what you probably do is you take what I would be doing if I was there is I'd take what the state regs are. I'd look at what we have now and say, is there any reason to go back to what we did before? And like in that case, like you said, Joel, that volume calculation, it's the bane of every code officer, every builder, maybe even every architect's existence. I don't want to speak for Tor on that, but
That's how I
it's a
make my
nightmare.
living.
Yeah,
Calculating volume.
yeah, it's nightmare. I hated geometry in high school. Don't make me do that as a code officer. Come on now. 2D plane.
I don't think anyone actually checks it. That's the thing. I think you just put a number down. Everyone's like, yeah, that's a lot. That okay.
Close enough.
I'll just, some of these things, like shoreland zoning, I mean, going back, I think it's going back to the character code version of the changes we were thinking about for the shoreland zoning. Anyway, there was a good deal of input from the county planner. At the time, Bob Fonts, he offered a lot of information and recommendations on, what we should be looking at. So I think it would be good if it was a small committee. It probably only needs to be maybe 2 or 3 people to take it on. But I think we're not reinventing the wheel. So I think using the county for whatever they can provide us and some other, decisions that need to be made. I think it could be quick work. I think John's right.
Good. We got to throw out them to relook at rural highway and the 250 foot, because that's the 2 biggest things I heard from everybody in town about complaints about the core zoning. So we got to throw that in the list too to be revisited for June.
Yeah, I think where there were at one point I had a list of a number of items and I don't have in front of me, but I think there are some other things that will refer to the planning board.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Anything else on zoning? All right. Let's move on to a town warrant for $87,747.44. Motions. Thank you, Joel. Do I have a second? Rob, thank you. Any discussion? Let's see anything that jumped out at me. Nope. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Anybody have anything else? We don't have any. Yeah, I think that's it.
I got one thing.
Go ahead.
So the John sent out that email last week or this week. I don't know. I guess it was last week about the CLC ambulance budget meeting. I went to it last year. I'd like to go again if there's no objection. It's next Monday at 5:30.
Yeah, it's the 17th. Yeah, I was asked to go to that too. So.
Oh, okay. I don't know if can we both go? Do you think?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, it'd be good. Yeah, I'm just curious. So I guess if John, you want to pass that over because I know that they're spacing chairs out.
Right.
So.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. We'll do.
That'd be great.
They must have an old list because I think that's because last year I'll have to check because maybe I'll have to check as to why because I only got it as a forward from somebody else, so we'll just have to update their list. So
yeah,
that's fine.
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add from John's manager's note. I I wanted to thank everyone in the town office for managing the election. We threw a special town meeting at them, but then didn't do that, and then added something to November, and they pulled off, the biggest numbers we've ever seen. So I think everyone deserves our thanks.
Almost definitely. Yeah. They did a great job.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And I'll add it's Michelle's birthday tomorrow too. So, all the
Ah.
more reason. Happy birthday,
Birthday,
Michelle. And
Michelle.
thank you very much.
Birthday.
No. Right.
Yeah, and that was, I would say, speaking of that election, that was unbelievable. Like just unbelievable. And you know what? Credit to everyone coming in. We did have, one or two folks without a mask. We dealt with it. It all happened. Everyone was cleaning up stuff. We had all kinds of new poll workers come in and help out for the first time. The town of Newcastle stepped up big, not just in their support in terms of participating and voting, but also in being willing to help. We had a number of people who asked to help, but we didn't have slots for. We had more help than we needed, and that never happens. So, Michelle and Shelley and Harriet and Karen Paz helped out, and Cal, and all the regular folks you usually see, the counters, so many people helped out, and it was but really a lot of credit goes to the team and Michelle in particular for making it happen. So and Clayton for pulling the trucks out in the fire department. They were also part of that too. So it was an all hands on deck situation, and everybody helped to make that successful as part of the town office. So I think a lot to be proud of there in terms of how the town pulled together to make this thing happen. So now it's done, and now we just have to implement a code in 6 weeks, and no big deal.
No big deal. Get a broadband grant done. We're good.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. See, that's how long this meeting has been.
All right. We have nothing to do between now and Christmas. We're solid.
Right.
All right. Hope we're good. Motion to adjourn.
Woo.
All right. Thanks, Tor, Wanda. All in favor? I'd say let's go home, but we're already here. So.
All right.
Good night, all.